Crave was conceived as a way to deliver our strong educational mission and our membership's desire for their continued learning. Through the Crave series, our chapter will deliver webinars and virtual meetings to deliver timely and relevant topics that are affecting our industry today.
It's about the effort that we expend to connect with people. But you have an opportunity to see people, you have an opportunity to chat with people. We may not have an opportunity to have appetizers and share a drink with each other, but we stay connected, and that's really the most important thing.
Being able to work together and learn together in a new format, a new environment, really helped us take those pre-existing relationships and friendships that I had to another level.
CoreNet has taken the leadership in these kinds of conversations for years and years, and so we're delighted to have this long-term relationship with CoreNet.
I found the CoreNet to be a great community of dedicated real estate professionals, and what it means to me is it gives me a wider network of people with whom to share ideas, to derive the best learnings, to test and experiment with things that I'm working on.
This program is all about personal growth and becoming the leader that you want to be.
CoreNet has always led the way when it comes to supporting the professional development of our members. Our roundtable discussions, our education workshops, and our professional development programs are just part of what makes CoreNet so valuable to our members. It was critical for us to find a way to still be able to facilitate all of this. Crave has provided us the platform to be just as effective and to still provide that value to our members in a virtual environment.
CoreNet not only provides a platform for different groups to come together regardless where you come from in terms of organization, but really help each member to feel like they belong in this organization.
We have a diverse membership base, and you will find that members come from all walks of life and from all over the world. However, it's still an area of focus for us to improve upon and to embrace equity, inclusion, and diversity through increasing awareness and taking action, as we know this will lead to more success for the organization and for our members.
Okay, we're just getting set up. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Jean Nutt, co-managing director of Gensler in Boston, also co-chair of the Real Advantage, and I'm excited about our workshop today, Evolving Technologies and Approaches to Improve Employee Confidence. I also wanted to share some of our upcoming Crave webinars. Next week, we have the Future of Food at Work. In January, save the date for Workplace Technology Strategies and the Flow of Business. Should I stay or go? That's certainly a question we're asking ourselves every day. And on January 20th, our Cornet Community Celebration Awards. Also, join the conversation. Please send all of your social media to Steve Smith at Northstar, and certainly like us on all of those different platforms too. Again, thank you to our corporate partners, as well as our Founding Circle sponsors, Platinum and Gold. A little housekeeping. During the course of the presentation, please feel free to put your questions in the question and answer, and we'll make sure and get those taken care of as part of the conversation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Abrams. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I'll just wait for the rest of our participants to come off mute. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We're going to do quick introductions and then get right into what it is that we're going to be chatting about today. My name is Sarah Abrams, and I'm the head of global real estate for Iron Mountain. And I'm joined today by, take it away, Dan.
Hello, Dan Aninos. I'm with Iron Mountain, and I look after our global facility management program and our energy and sustainability program globally.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Lose. I'm one of the founders and COO of Crowd Comfort, and we have a mobile facilities solution for the enterprise.
Hello, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm Elo Alfodela with VergeSense. We're based in San Francisco, and we are a workplace analytics company that helps companies with our customers with space management. I'm on the business development team. Nice to meet everyone.
Great. And I'm Chris Brablick. I lead marketing for Crowd Comfort.
Well, thank you all, and thank you all for participating in this event, and thank you all for joining in. We're here today to talk a bit about, probably everybody's sick of talking about COVID, but we are going to talk about kind of what's next and all how we have adapted to COVID, and how we're trying to make our workplaces and make our workplaces safer, but also instill some confidence in our employees as we start to think about coming back to the office. So one of the things that's happened as a result of COVID is things changed dramatically, and they changed really quickly. And all of us probably work for companies that were thinking immediately, how are we going to adjust to this? How are we all going to serve our clients, as well as how are we going to help our employees? So a lot of us have had technology in the workplace helping us with various things. And at Iron Mountain, we have been using VergeSense, and we have been using Crowd Comfort pre-COVID. And all of a sudden, we have this situation with COVID, and we are trying to kind of figure out what we need to do. And we are going to our partners in Crowd Comfort and VergeSense and asking, what can you do to kind of help us in our office space and what it is that we're trying to do for our employees. And so really, that's sort of the backdrop of what it is that we're going to talk about today, how companies have adapted their offerings to help their clients. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to moderate for us today. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. No, I really appreciate that. Yeah, we have a great conversation today. I'm an MC, so I'm just going to try to keep things moving and ask questions. As just a reminder, as Jeannie mentioned as well, please ask questions. These conversations are way better if we have audience questions throughout. And so we'll be moderating that and answering most likely at the end, any questions that come in. So please ask them as the session is going. So as Sarah mentioned, we're going to look at kind of the past, the present, and the future of property tech and how it's impacting COVID. And so let's start kind of back in 2019, right? We're at the end of 2019. We're starting to prepare for 2020. And we have, a lot of these plans for innovation within our workplaces and how we kind of manage and engage with our employees through those facilities. So can you, let's start there and then look at, Dan and Sarah, let's look at, some of the initiatives that you looked to put in place before you knew COVID was a thing, right? And look at, it would be also great to kind of understand how you went about evaluating the technologies and the solutions you used to also support some of those big initiatives that you had planning on the facility side. So why don't we just get started here, Sarah and Dan, to share kind of what you guys were looking at.
Sure. Dan, why don't you take Crowd Comfort and I'll talk about VergeSense.
Okay, great. Thank you. So prior in 2019, my focus on the facility side really focused around two major work streams on technology. One was sensors, and then the other one was data integration. On the sensors perspective, I was really looking for how do we inform to make decisions. And some of the technologies we were pursuing at that time was self-testing emergency lights, so we don't have to touch it. We're also looking at PIRs within our facilities, turning on and off lights based on motion. Waste management, put a camera in there and see when the bin is full, and therefore you save money on that side. And then the last one was integrating a bunch of our thermostats. Now that sensor moves over towards data implementation and how do you integrate that data so you can make decisions into our work order platform. And that's at the point where we actually engage Crowd Comfort to help us put the human, if you will, in the loop with that sensor technology that we mentioned, and then be able to tie any issues we're having in our facilities through a upfront user-friendly technology, i.e. your cell phone, and then input that information into our work order system so we can get quick reaction and be able to inform the end user, if you will, when things were fixed or when things were going to get fixed, and so they can raise work orders. And that helped us on the compliance side. And that also helped us integrate all that data into a user-friendly platform and then get it into a work order so we can take action on it. So there are some of the technologies that we used pre-COVID to set the conditions really for our facilities moving forward and with the partnership of Crowd Comfort.
And so Crowd Comfort was also very important to us from a compliance perspective. We actually had several use cases for Crowd Comfort, not just the use case of the employees having a user-friendly interface to report facilities issues, but also for our people in the field in our warehouse. And we're actually looking to we rolled that out in some very different kind of use cases, which Dan may be able to get into. And you could probably talk about how you ended up selecting Crowd Comfort also. I'll just say on the VergeSense side, we were planning actually along with Gensler to do a renovation of our headquarters. And we really wanted to push the envelope in terms of a newer, fresher, more open, much more space for collaboration, and much more gathering spaces, et cetera. And we were well underway on this effort when COVID hit. But when we started the effort, one of the things that became really clear to me was that we really needed data around how our space was being used. And frankly, we have 90 million square feet of real estate. We have very little office space. So we are not really focused a lot on the utilization of office space as much as we are the density of our warehouses. But when it came to this project, it was a very important project for us. And what I was looking for was a technology that was simple to install, that did not have a lot of interconnection with our IT organization, didn't have a lot of the heavy hardware that's necessary in a lot of these sensor type companies. And what you have with VergeSense and why we went with them was because basically for something that looks like a smoke detector that can be put in like a clip in your ceiling and installed super quickly, we were able to have it installed in a day or so. And then we were getting real-time dashboards of really understanding how our space was being used. So that's how we selected in that space, because I, as many of you have, seen many of these kinds of technologies. And I wanted something that was that would give us real-time data, that we could also set up dashboards for our architects to be looking at as they were designing. They could have access also. So it was really why we picked that. Dan, do you want to describe anything other about crowd comfort before we move on?
Yeah, so on the crowd comfort side, it was important for us to tag, if you will, their locations as an example of all of our surveillance equipment, for example, in our warehouses. And the importance of the surveillance equipment is we have to meet certain regulations through NAID and NARA and federal regulations to ensure that our buildings are protected in a secure way. So we found this technology for crowd comfort is we were able to asset tag the actual location in our warehouses. We have many cameras in our warehouses. And then we were able to have a operations manager, for example, just go to that particular camera, ensure it's working, and be able to tag it through the cell phone. And then if there's anything wrong with it, and it immediately goes back to our work order system so somebody can react to fix it. So that was an important compliance piece that allows you a simple technology, total asset visibility, where it's located, and if it's working or not. And then our auditors can come in there and see an entire history of when each camera was looked at, and then any action was taken to rectify any sort of repair that it's needed. So that's how we chose that technology. It was very simple. We got it up and running in days, and we're able to meet full compliance around our warehouses when it comes to that particular space.
Fantastic. Great. And I think two of the commonalities I heard there were both data, right? And being able to really have good data from both of the solutions, but also the ease of implementation to scale that very quickly, which I find really interesting. So we'll go from kind of the looking at it from a real estate and facility standpoint to looking at the technologies and the impact COVID had there. So Kevin and Elo, I know probably going into 2020, your technologies and your go-to-market plans probably were much different than what they are now. So it would be great to kind of discuss and kind of what trends were you seeing before this, before COVID kind of hit, that you guys were really focused on around some of the tools and solutions you were providing. And so Kevin, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pre-pandemic 2019, we were really starting to see the interest and activity for kind of modern real estate technology accelerate. And believe it or not, this seems like a long time ago, but it was actually this year. There was a time where everyone was trying to figure out how many more people can we fit in a smaller space. And you were seeing a lot of investment in kind of the workplace of the future that included open office, hoteling area, collaboration spaces, right? And a lot of the technology investments being made, at least from our perspective, was around experience for the employee and better data, right? And it's interesting now to kind of look back on that. And I think I'd love to hear Elo's thoughts here as well, because we've kind of both taken the technology that we were selling and bringing to market, and kind of completely modified our offerings to address some of these new challenges during COVID. But that's kind of where we were at the beginning of 2020, seeing this acceleration, seeing this mega trend of the kind of open office environment.
Great. And Ella?
Yeah, like Kevin said, pre-COVID, the problem statement was definitely space management. So customers were embarking on a journey to implement activity-based working, and many of the companies that we worked with were somewhere along that journey. They were looking to maybe build out purposeful spaces for meetings or for employees to focus, and wanted to use data to inform those builds. They were looking to identify excess capacity or spaces that were not used optimally. For example, people using large meeting rooms for small meetings, or assigning excess allocation of desks that just didn't get used. And then again, other companies were looking to move from an assigned seating model to an unassigned model where they could densify more people into fewer square feet. And all of these use cases required a data feed that informed them how busy a floor plate was, how people use space, how long people stayed in the office. So that was our primary bread and butter business pre-COVID. And like Kevin said, I think COVID completely disrupted that, because people are thinking very differently about how to occupy space, and it's less about densification now, understandably, and more about safety, capacity management, and that kind of thing.
Perfect. I think that's a great segue to this. And it's really interesting that, getting as many bodies into the workplace and allowing them to work productively there. Now it's like, how do we social distance and do that? So let's go into kind of some of the solutions and some of the alterations you made to your existing solutions based on customer feedback around COVID, and how they help with the return to work strategy. So Kevin, why don't we go through kind of what Crowd Comfort has looked through, and then Ella will take through kind of some of the things that VergeSense is innovating on. So Kevin, I'm pulling up slides here.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I have like 3 or 4 slides here, kind of give you an overview of how we modified our offering, but also what we've been doing with Iron Mountain during the pandemic here. So Crowd Comfort, our core platform pre-pandemic, or where we were focusing a lot of our efforts, were around making it simple and easy for employees to submit requests around the workplace, maintenance, health, safety, all of those things, to build a more responsive workplace, to build a better experience. With the emergence of COVID, we kind of did, like a lot of other businesses, we put everything on pause. We kind of reached out to our community of partners and customers and asked, how can we be helpful? And the feedback from those who knew our solution the best was that, look, you guys are already grabbing location data, and we're already grabbing category data. So there was 2 things we could do that would be helpful right off the bat. The first is adding COVID-related categories, which is really easy to do in the app. Things like deep cleaning requests, soap refill requests, and hand sanitizer requests. These obviously were much more important now, and the stakes are higher for these. So we wanted to make it easy for folks to submit these requests. The other thing we did is we kind of took a step back, because we didn't have too many employees in the office anymore. And so we kind of flipped the script, and we made some modifications to the application, and we put it in the hands of the janitorial vendors. Obviously, cleanliness and safety is a higher priority now. And the output for this product was something that the janitorial staff would use to identify where they are and the type of cleaning that they're doing. For facility real estate leaders, would then have access to a live visualization showing what's been cleaned and what hasn't. And there's really 2 ways that this can be leveraged. One is on the back office side to drive accountability and transparency, and what Sarah and Dan already mentioned, which is compliance, right? I mean, as we know in Massachusetts and other states are following suit, California and New York, states are rapidly evolving their requirements around janitorial documentation. And exactly where that goes is TBD, but it's moving in the direction of something that's digital, accessible, and transparent. And so those were really the requirements that we built Crowd Comfort around. The other ways can be leveraged is shared with employees to instill confidence when they do return to the workplace that they're entering a safe and clean workplace. And so, super configurable, and the parameters we set with Iron Mountain that you can see here. This is a snapshot of the dashboard at the HQ. And so the parameters they set were, if it's clean the last 4 hours, it will be green. The critical threshold is 24 hours. So anything over 24 hours would be red, and in between would be yellow. Again, Iron Mountain, and this is a testament to Sarah and Dan's team, they've done an amazing job of building that responsive and safe work environment. And as you can see here, what you're looking at as this red line would be anything that's overdue. And so they're significantly below this threshold, on average about 8 hours between cleanings. So I think this is not just a great, a symbol or a sign of what Sarah and Dan and their teams are doing, but it's also, what you can start to do when you digitize processes like this. And when we did deploy this, we found that we were actually filling a gap. Whereas before, when janitorial services were being conducted and tracked, they were done at best on a spreadsheet, and probably more likely they were being completed on paper on the back of a bathroom door that we're all used to seeing. And so, I think once you digitize a process like this, there's a lot of interesting ways you can leverage the data that can be a value add. In this case, to look at frequency thresholds, but you could do the same thing with, distribution of who's doing the work to right size the janitorial services. You can also look at the volume of activities across different timeframes and things like that. So again, I think this has been really great to work with the Iron Mountain team and deploy this project and demonstrate that, look, we have built a responsive work environment. We're also building a safer and cleaner work environment. And that's something we can share. Not with just the executive team, but also the employees.
So that's really great with crowd comfort, really focusing on, all right, how do we build transparency into the cleaning aspects, especially with companies increasing their budgets a lot based off of health and safety standards. So Elo, I know VergeSense has gone through a lot of changes and innovations as well, using the data in a lot of different ways to help with COVID and back to work. Can you take us a little bit through kind of how VergeSense has kind of morphed and met the challenge for a lot of their customers?
Of course. So similar to Crowd Comfort, our platform inherently had all of the components to extend itself into helping out with COVID-related use cases. So we make a sensor that mounts in the ceiling and counts in real time the number of occupants of a space. This sensor is able to tell the distance between work points. And as a result, we're able to measure social distancing and help with things like capacity management, telling how many people are on the floor. Many of the customers that we talked to were actually looking to reduce the capacity of their workplace, of the workspaces, to ensure that social distancing was happening and people weren't clustering and that kind of thing. And so what we did tactically, after talking to a number of customers and understanding their challenges, was we built some software to support these use cases. So one of them was this is the COVID compliance dashboard. And the way it works is for a given company that's reduced the number of people they want to have in the building, they've set a capacity of, say, 50% of the building. We can measure attendance to that building and duration of stay, and whether or not more people than the company expected were using the floor. And so over time, this report would allow space planners to understand if the measures they had put in place were actually working and to take corrective action where those measures were not working. And this, depending on the distribution of the sensors, we could actually measure down to the workstation level. So if you had situations where you had designated workspaces for people and you saw clustering happening there, you could quickly identify it and address it. We also have the ability, just based on the way the sensors work, to measure the space between, the distance between work points and people. And so we're able to generate reports that will tell you if people are too close to each other. And in fact, you can see on this chart I'm showing here, you could essentially list out the spaces where social distancing violations took place. We see a use case where this could potentially evolve into a contact tracing type of application as well over time. And then we see a very compelling opportunity to to partner with a company like Crowd Comfort to report out on spaces that have actually been used. So because the sensors keep track of occupancy, we can, on any given day, tell you exactly which spaces got used and for how long. So you can determine what to clean, intensity of cleaning, and what to avoid cleaning, because you know which spaces that were not used that day, and therefore you can avoid cleaning those. So, I think there'll be a natural extension of this would be to port that data into a solution like Kevin's, where you can now show which spaces have been cleaned once you've identified them using the data from VergeSense. So these 3 use cases give us an opportunity to immediately help our customers start thinking smartly about reentry, and that's kind of what we've done so far.
Perfect. And I think what's really interesting here is that you're both capturing a lot of data on behalf of your customers, and so you're putting that data to good use with the innovations that you guys have made since March, since everything kind of hit, where most people were working from home. So, when we think about that, obviously that's from a technology perspective, how things have adapted, but I would love to, know from Dan and Sarah, like your point of view of, you guys already had some of these technologies in place pre-COVID, and that put you in a really unique position to start utilizing them to really meet the new challenges that came with COVID. Can you talk a little bit about kind of, the differences in some of the strategies you put in place because of COVID, and, how the technology has helped there? And Dan, why don't we start with you?
Great. So I think it's important whenever you're faced with a particular crisis, if you will, there's 3 or 4 simple steps you have to follow in order to get it about right. If you can, you got to have a steady hand. You have to have a consistent approach. You have to make sound decisions, and ultimately you have to have compassion. So when faced with this COVID pandemic in March, if you apply all those 4 items, we came up with a simple solution, but complex to implement, because we had to keep all of our facilities open, because our customers, our hospitals, our banks, our mortgage, they wanted more digitization. We had to deliver to certain locations of high risk. So the challenge we had, we could not close our facilities. Our customers depended on us. So how do we keep our facilities safe and comfort level, and show that compassion to our employees? So really, the strategy we came about was more of a layered defense, and was focused around automation. It was focused around the air, that we breathe within our facilities. It was focused around cleaning. And then, to your point, it was focused around data. And then how do we combine all that and put a layered defense in place? So if you look at some of the technologies that we had in place, for example, Crowd Comfort, we already had that technology in place. We knew exactly where our assets were. So then in our headquarters here in particular, we put barcodes at strategic locations throughout the headquarters and in other locations in Pennsylvania where we deployed it. And then every time cleaning crews came by, we knew when it was clean, just like Kevin showed. So we used an existing technology, modified it, and made it more compliant to what we were trying to do. Plus, more importantly, it gave our employees that comfort level of being able to say, hey, I know when something was clean. So the other thing that we also work towards is getting a little bit tactical, is you in your climate control systems, you want to maintenance them more frequently. So that's another way, asset tag it, and when you change that filter, because that's important for the air portion of keeping your facility safe. So we put those layered defenses using the data, using the automation, and using the technologies that were presented today in order to ensure we're fully compliant, but more importantly, our employees are safe, and also keep our business operational. That was critical to us.
So let me say, we say a majority of people working from home, but there are millions and millions and millions of people who are not sitting here watching us on Zoom, and their work requires them to be out and about and working hard. And that is the majority of Iron Mountain population. We are designated as an essential business because of what we do, because of who our clients are and what we deliver to them. So it was very important for us to make sure that our frontline employees were protected with proper PPE at the same time that we were helping our hospital clients and our health center clients get deliveries of PPE. They were trying to source it from all over the world. They certainly don't have a place where they can bring different parts and pieces of that kind of kit in and then assemble it. So we were taking the deliveries from all around the world. We were doing the fulfillment and the building of the PPE kits, and we were using our fleet to deliver these to some of the most stressed hospitals, particularly in New York, et cetera, but all of our hospital clients around the country and the PPE. The second thing that happened is that with all the office workers having to leave, many of our clients had a large in-office presence where they were collecting important information, whether it be checks, policies, et cetera, et cetera. So we were able to, just like Crowd Comfort and VergeSense had to adapt what it was that they were doing to respond to the needs of their clients, Iron Mountain was adapting to respond to the needs of our clients externally, setting up digital mail rooms so that we could take their mail, scan their mail, distribute it electronically to the people that needed to act on it, et cetera, to help state departments of unemployment insurance digitize their requests so they could actually process unemployment checks faster. So all of these kinds of things that we were doing, we were then turning around as a client and asking our technology providers to help us do better. For people who have large campuses, for example, that they have to manage with people, and you have all of your people home and very few people in, you have to clean, but you don't have to clean the same way for space that sits empty 5 days a week that you do for space that's being occupied. So understanding where the people are to then set up your cleaning protocols and then be able to document those cleaning protocols is really quite compelling to us. I would say that we had to stop our project as a result of COVID, our planned renovation. So we're on hold right now. We're rethinking, but we're going to be using and considering all of the kinds of data that we get from the VergeSense sensors as we kind of come back together. And we will be looking at how, one of the key things for us right now as a company, and I'm sure many of my colleagues are facing this, is how do you make the employees feel comfortable coming back to the office? That is going to be a challenge. There's only so much we can do in the workspace. They still have to get to the workspace, and that's going to be a challenge. So I think all of us have a big challenge ahead of us as people in the corporate real estate business, also considering the fact that this pandemic has forever changed the individual worker. In my sense, I feel strongly that people are not going to want to be told anymore, you have to be in the office 100% of the time. Likewise, they're not going to want to be told that you have to be working remotely 100% of the time. So those of us in the corporate real estate industry, figuring out what's the new vision of the office, why is it here, how are we going to make people comfortable here, kind of going forward and productive, is going to be our real challenge. And I hope that we continue to have good and even better technologies that can help us, because it will be a big challenge.
And that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about next, which is the future, right? What is that new normal going to look like? I think we have two kind of future-oriented discussions here. We have one, which is the near future, which is, how do we get people back to work? How do we reduce anxiety in coming back for our employees? And then we have kind of the overarching future of like, what can we do today that helps us with that return to work strategy, but also helps us for what the future looks like with work. As you mentioned, probably a little bit more flexibility in terms of where work is done and when it's done, from the employee perspective, and how does the workplace fit into that conversation of how work is done. So to kind of get started there, it would be great kind of to understand from an Iron Mountain perspective, and Dan, we'll start with you. What are you guys seeing with your workers in terms of, return to work? How are you guys reducing anxiety? But like also, as you look future kind of oriented, how do your facilities and workplaces fit into the average worker's day and kind of work environment?
Yeah, I think what I've seen is, when the first wave came around in March, April timeframe, as I was getting out and about, and as we had to keep our frontline workers working and supporting our customers, you sense that anxiety a little bit of actually coming to a physical place to either dispatch a vehicle or grab a record, digitize something, and what have you. But then as we put in protocols in place, as we were able to purchase the PPE, understood how the virus operates, if you will, the best science out there, and applying that best sciences, I think over time, we saw our workers a little bit more comfortable going into that workplace to do their day-to-day, grab a record, digitize this, grab the dispatch keys and go out and service the customer and then come back. Even in nice headquarters here, early on in March, April, you saw nobody here. And now over time, as we put the protocols in place, as we put the technologies in place, as we communicate what we're doing and visually see it, even today here at One Fed, you're getting workers coming in and I sense they're feeling a little bit more comfortable. Now, that's not to say, we're going to go back to normal pre-COVID once the vaccines and herd immunity, all that occurs. I still think there's going to be some sort of a change, and it's going to take a while to get to some sort of a new norm. But I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen as we work through the science on this is really around how do we better manage our climate control systems. Recognize I may be diving a little bit, but I think that's one of those areas that needs a little bit more focus and a little bit more technology and tweaking our systems to optimize the fresh air, to clean the air before it gets into the space, and then when he leaves the space to clean it. So I think a lot of work needs to be done there, and I'm confident that technology is out there, whether it's ultraviolet lights, whether it's certain types of filters, tweaking the system. But I think that's one of the areas that needs a little bit more focus going forward from a lessons learned perspective. And we at Iron Mountain are actually implementing some of those technologies to take care of that air, to make our customers more comfortable in the space, and even putting CO2 sensors in, for example, that helps understand, okay, how much is 10 people get elevated CO2. So all those types of things I think we're going to see come forward as we get out on the back end of this and learn from it. Sir?
Yeah, I think Dan is right. We have a when I think kind of future, I'm very focused on the HVAC in the facilities, and I think they have been probably the hardest thing to attack. We can all put up the temperature controls for people walking in. We do have that. A lot of people have checklists before you can come into the office, so they can monitor that. A lot of the stuff that people have been able to do, whether it's barriers, social distance, this, that, and the other. But the buildings that we're in have not been built to solve for this. They have not been built to solve for this. And it's not an easy fix or an inexpensive fix to go back and do some of the work in the HVAC systems, which may not even be able to take what is necessary in order to do that. So what I see in the future is a much heightened sense of and a much heightened view from the corporate real estate people that are looking at space to be asking those questions of landlords. And I'm looking at there's going to be a need for landlords to really be thinking about how they are going to retrofit their systems in a bigger way, and new facilities coming up. That is going to be a question and an issue for people as they decide what it is that they're going to be doing when they're leasing space. And it's really important. It will have many other benefits in addition to that. But we're sitting in you sit in a 38-story tower without operable windows and a certain type of HVAC system, which will not on its own be able to address the virus.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of challenges as we look at some of the real estate that we're looking at, and that's a really good point. From a technology perspective, it would be great, Elo and Kevin, to really kind of understand where you see technologies going. I think a lot of people are investing technologies specifically for COVID, but I'd be curious kind of how you see those technologies that are being implemented for COVID actually having an impact on kind of our new normal when it comes to how the workplace fits into an employee's career and day to day. So Elo, it would be great to kind of understand a little bit kind of where you see kind of work going, and how do you see kind of technology addressing that?
Sure thing. Yeah, so we've been talking to a lot of companies about what happens post-vaccine in the new world, and I think that the virus has been disruptive in a number of ways, right? My primary care physician said, "Hey, listen, telemedicine's here to stay. Like, we're not putting that genie back in the bottle." So in some occupations, things are going to change radically. Like, your primary care physicians are not going to want to see you in person if they don't need to. In other industries, it's going to be something like remote work for non-essential people that don't need to be in the office, which means that there'll be excess capacity in the office to get more creative about the ways you use space. And some of the companies that we've talked to are looking at things like enabling employees to schedule the right type of space at the right time when they want to go into the office. What does this mean? You have a mobile app. You can, in real time, look at what's available for inventory in the company's portfolio. You can book a space in the office closest to you before you get to the office, right? And then you use that space when you go in. It might be a private office, it might be a meeting room, might be a desk. And then once you've used that space, there's some indication that it was used, so it triggers a cleaning cycle for that particular space. We have, because it's low-hanging fruit, in our next generation hardware, we're actually building in temperature, air quality, and humidity sensors, because I think there's going to be a much higher level of sensitivity about air quality in buildings. And it's a very simple thing to do. So our next SKU that we'll release next quarter will actually have those sensing capabilities as well. So we'll have an environmental feed in addition to an occupancy feed in our platform. Yeah, so I think that those are sort of the things that immediately come to mind. Changing work habits, ability to use space as a service, and then the technologies that enable us to do so.
Great. And Kevin, we'll get to you, but just one reminder, we'll get to questions right after this. So please submit your questions right now, and we'll answer them after Kevin.
Right, thanks, Chris. I think everyone hit the nail on the head about how things are going to change or how they may change. From my perspective, I think that the technologies that are really going to win are going to be the ones that are mobile, responsive, configurable, and collaborative. And I think Iron Mountain is a great example of the benefits of using a technology like this. And any of the companies that had technology like this deployed pre-pandemic were able to respond much more efficiently to these new challenges, right? And I think we already talked about this, but within months, both VergeSense and Crowd Comfort had worked closely with Iron Mountain, the client, to modify our offerings to address these new challenges. And they were both deployed, I think, 3 months, 2 months right after the pandemic. They were already live and in production, adding value. So I think that's the benefit of modern mobile technologies. You have the ability to do those things. And so, someone mentioned earlier that there are a lot of folks out there who are focused on the next 6 months. Let's get a solution for the next 6 months. And I think it can be a detriment to have blinders on only the next 6 months. And I think if you take a step back and look at the whole picture, with a lot of these solutions out there, like there are near-term benefits that can address these new COVID challenges. But once you have that infrastructure in place, there's so much more you can do with it, even post-pandemic, even post-vaccine. There's still going to be value to get out of those solutions. Because again, these modern mobile solutions are constantly getting better, constantly getting more adaptive and starting to work together. We already talked about, Crowd Comfort, VergeSense. There's a clear collaborative opportunity there around the cleaning, not just knowing what to clean and when to clean it, but validating who cleaned it. Elo mentioned, air filter changes or HVAC monitoring. We're doing something similar. We can take the same logic that we did with the cleaning to validate what's been cleaned by who. You can apply that to air filters. When was it last cleaned? By who? Which one's coming up? So again, these are things that will continue once you have this infrastructure in place to be a value add for organizations in the long run.
Perfect. And
I think if I could just jump in there, I think what we're seeing a sea change, and so a lot of companies that sent their people home were not planning to do this. They were not planning to wholesale send all of their employees home, and the work processes had to continue. And in many cases, companies, have adapted to help those companies, and there's opportunities there. And for example, I gave you the digital mailroom, but take it a step further and say, because this is kind of what you're seeing, and say, okay, so now this person is at home working, and what am I going to do when they have some kind of confidential, record now that, we're not set up, Iron Mountain's not set up to go to people's houses to do shredding, right? So how do we are in the same process of figuring out what we need to change about our delivery system and our business model in order to help this. You're starting to see legislation come, and I think it's going to be a continued thing, putting requirements on the employers for what they have to provide to or pay for work at home workers. And you're going to start to see more and more legislation around that. And when that happens, then there's going to be a challenge for us in the real estate world or in any employer of saying, okay, how am I going to actually, provide that? What kind of programs am I going to set up so the employee can get what they need without it being a major production? Because one thing this pandemic exposed is where the technology is still clunky, where it doesn't work seamlessly. And I think long term, any kind of way for people to be able to work seamlessly anywhere is something that improves the company's resilience, and it is going to be something that the companies are really going to be looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about employee experience, no matter where it is. And I think that's the great point, that the workplace needs to kind of up-level itself to be a place where people want to go in, right? For part of their employee life. So great. So we had a few questions come in. So I'm going to get to a few of these. One question we did have come in was just, how do you manage vendors during this time with COVID? With people not in the office. I know, Kevin and Elo, you probably have some thoughts there. Also, Iron Mountain, would love to get your thoughts too on kind of how those conversations.
I'll let you answer that, Dan. You're the master.
So what we've done is we had to continue our construction and our growth projects globally. I'll just give one simple example, although a complex project was out in Indonesia, where we had to build a 25-meter building in order to support the growth of the business. In that location, we could not get into the country, so we put a technology in place to where we had weekly calls, and we put a camera overlooking the actual construction, and I was able to get live feed on how things were going, watching the safety, watching the PPE protocols, watching certain portions of that construction, and then I'm able to see the entire history of that build of the slab, whatever that is. So we were able to monitor some of the quality control and assurance and safety remotely, and then obviously we had to hire locally to have physical visits and then report back. So we used a lot of the camera technology, internet technology to help us manage the vendor on the ground, and then be able to visually see how things were going on the construction site, just as an example.
Got it. And Kevin, Elo, it would be great to kind of understand from a technology perspective, like how did you work with customers when employees weren't necessarily in the office with some of the new innovations you guys had?
I mean, I can start. I think we always got a lot of value out of going on site to be with clients, right? Whenever we launched a new big project and having that engagement and hands-on assistance. I think just like this big experiment has proved that people can work remotely to a certain extent, I think we proved that we can deploy remotely. And we've done so. I mean, just in the last couple of months, we've launched over 5 million square feet without stepping foot on site. And so I think, the ability to do a lot of these activities virtually is now possible through all this technology available that we're all using day to day now.
And Elo, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so inherently, VergeSense is a distributed company. We have employees that have been home-based, like myself. So the thing that changed was not being able to go get FaceTime with our customers. And that you would think for a company in the business of counting people in the workplace, that we would be in a world of hurt right now, since the workplace is empty, there's no one to count. But it's actually the opposite. Many of our customers are in the middle of implementing workplace programs that require occupancy data as part of the future. And so, we have many companies that are actually doubling down on projects, taking advantage of the fact that we can build out the infrastructure because the office is so accessible. So what this has done for us is actually accelerate the adoption of our technology in some of our major customers. So we have companies that had schedules that took us out 2 years, bringing in those schedules and doing everything now that the offices are empty.
Got it. Interesting. And we'll get to one final question here. The question is on kind of communication with employees. Employee anxiety is a big deal, not only just being in the office, but getting to the office, right? I know Dan and Sarah, you guys are doing a lot of interesting communications with folks to kind of hopefully lessen that anxiety with the things that you guys are doing in your office space and facilities. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing? And Kevin, Elo, if you have any other customer examples that might be interesting.
Well, listen, we're right at the hour, so I'm going to be really brief, and I think we need to let people go right at 1 because they'll want to drop. And it's around being transparent, and a regularly cadenced communication, even if there's not anything new to say, and a reinforcement of the message on a regular basis, and very clear about what it is that we're doing, and very clear about what their responsibilities are and what we hope that they are doing also. So for us, that communication is layered. We have CEO communications. We have a whole series of communications that go out regularly to our employees. They were ramped up right at the beginning of COVID. People really responded well, and a lot of people in our employee survey have said that they would like this level of communication to continue post-COVID on what's going on with the company, how people are doing, how mountaineers around the world are doing, how many people have been sick, how many people have recovered, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a really around being transparent with folks, and doing it regularly, and taking the actions that are necessary to try and make the workplace as safe as we can make it. We can't make it 100% safe, but letting people know what we're doing.
Perfect. And I think that's a great place to end. Debbie, is there any other final notes before we let people go?
Nope, just really want to thank everyone. Great discussion, and I'm sure we'll continue. And everyone will be getting a survey, so we would request that you please fill it out and really appreciate it. And everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.